The former president and vice president of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, has warned Germany after the start of the Ukrainian attack on Russian territory, as Kiev's troops used German tanks. Medvedev referred to the German tabloid Bild, saying that the said media has published a revanchist article, where it proudly announces the return of German tanks to Russian soil. He warned that in response, Moscow will do everything to bring the newest Russian tanks to the Platz der Republik, the famous landmark in the German capital, Berlin. The German newspaper Bild has published a revanchist article where it proudly announces the return of German tanks to Russian soil. In response, we will do everything to bring the newest Russian tanks to Platz der Republik, he wrote in X. Recall, the German Foreign Ministry has commented on the events in Russia's Kursk Oblast and stated that Ukraine has the right to self-defense on Russian territory. Recently, he said that Russia needs to learn lessons from the Ukrainian army's actions on the border with the Kursk region and resolutely crush the enemy. Ukraine has the right to self-defense enshrined in international law. This is not limited to its own territory, the German Foreign Ministry said in a comment to Politico. It is stressed in the article that many politicians from Germany's opposition party, the Christian Democratic Union, have also explicitly supported the offensive by Ukrainian forces and the use of German weapons on Russian territory. We need to learn a serious lesson from what happened and do what Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov pledged to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief to do, that is, resolutely defeat and crush the enemy, he said. Medvedev stressed that the reasons and goals of the terrorist operation of Ukrainian Nazis in the Kursk region have been thoroughly and objectively analyzed. In his opinion, Kiev was particularly guided by a desire to demonstrate the best sides of its dwindling forces to its masters in order to get more money and weapons, as well as to make Russia redeploy some of its forces from the line of engagement to Kursk and Belgorod, temporarily making a failure look like a success in the information field. Ukrainian forces are pushing further into the Kursk region of Russia, in a cross-border incursion. At present, Ukrainian armed forces are building fortifications in the Kursk region, fighting with the Russian armed forces 15 kilometers from the city of Lvov and 30 kilometers from Kurchatov. According to Russian war correspondent Mikhail Zvinchuk, the area of conditional control of Ukrainian formations in the Sudza district has expanded to 30 kilometers. The Ukrainian armed forces are moving in high-speed dashes and bypassing pockets of resistance to the Russian army along bypass roads. The settlements of Kazakya Lokhnya, Mirny, Kruglik and Bondarevka have been taken. In the south, Ukrainian formations entered Martinovka and tied up the troops there in battle. Simultaneous battles were fought at the entrance to Koronivo, and attempts were also made to take Olgovka with Kremyannoy. According to Mikhail Zvinchuk, the Ukrainian military began to use the uniforms of Russian military personnel and civilian medical transport to capture positions and checkpoints of the Russian armed forces. As Zvinchuk writes, 15 kilometers south of the city of Lvov, fierce battles are taking place in the surrounding settlements. Lvov is the center of the Lvovsky district of the Kursk region. The city's population is about 17,000 people. The armed forces of Ukraine have already begun digging in at the achieved lines, introducing a second echelon. The enemy has begun to build fortifications in the Kursk region. The enemy continues to transfer infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, tanks and armored vehicles to the territory of the Russian Federation, writes Russian military correspondent Yuri Kotnak. Helicopters of the armed forces of Ukraine have also been spotted in the Sudza area. According to war correspondent Kotnak, separate sabotage groups are located approximately 30 kilometers from Kurchatov, where the Kursk nuclear power plant is located. At the moment, it is premature to talk about the threat of the enemy capturing a strategic facility. Nevertheless, the situation is alarming. An advisor to President Volodymyr Zelensky, who like some other officials spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the operation, confirmed the Ukrainian military activity inside Russia and said its forces had seized about 100 square kilometers. In this situation, people in the region have complained that there was no organized evacuation, that the Ukrainian incursion caught them by surprise, and that they left their homes without belongings and documents in the middle of the night. They cannot contact relatives left behind, they said, because the mobile network is not working in the area. The Kursk offensive has put new pressure on Putin as Russian civilians have had to be evacuated under the same type of bombardment Ukrainians have endured for more than 2 years. German-made heavy armor pieces are rolling through the fields of Russia's Kursk region again, some 80 years since one of the biggest battles of World War II in the same area, Bild wrote, reporting on Kiev's cross-border incursion. The German tabloid, citing videos posted online, said that several Marder infantry fighting vehicles have been spotted among the equipment used by the Ukrainian military in its offensive. The news of German-made weapons being used in an attack on Russia's internationally recognized Russian territory has prompted a mixed reaction in Germany. The head of the German Parliament's Defense Committee, Markus Faber, stated he had no issues with the development. Any weapons handed over to Kiev cease to be German and become Ukrainian ones, he told the Funk media group. He also described the territory of both Ukraine and Russia as a war zone. Ukraine has the right to self-defense enshrined in international law, Germany's foreign ministry told Politico in a statement. This is not limited to its own territory. Many politicians in Germany's conservative opposition have provided even more full-throated support for the Ukrainian offensive, and the use of German weapons on Russian territory. Roderich Kiesewetter, a senior lawmaker with the Christian Democrats, told Politico it's totally legitimate to strike staging areas inside Russia with weapons donated by Germany. The question of whether Western weapons are involved doesn't come up because, after they are delivered, they are Ukrainian weapons, said Kiesewetter. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has so far refrained from breaking away from his summer vacation to say anything about the incursion. Both Berlin and Washington shifted policy on hitting Russian territory in May in response to the Russian offensive against Ukraine's second city of Kharkiv. Ukraine has the right, guaranteed under international law, to defend itself against these attacks, a German government spokesperson said at the time. I-Response Deputy Chair of Security Council of Russian Federation Dmitry Medvedev wrote on X account, the German newspaper Bild has published a revanchist article where it proudly announces German tanks come back to the Russian land. In response, we're going to do everything to bring the newest Russian tanks to Platz D, Republic.
The Russian army is running out of light armored vehicles. It has reached a plateau in terms of ammunition, and today the number of shells is much smaller than 2 years ago, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. The enemy is increasing the production of drones and trying to carry out more massive strikes on infrastructure facilities in Ukraine, but it does not have an infinite number of tanks and motivated manpower, so it is quite possible to predict that the Russian army will exhaust its offensive potential in the fall. This opinion was expressed by Maximilian Andronikov, Deputy Commander of the Freedom of Russia Legion, Caesar, in an interview with Vasily Golovanov on the YouTube channel Fabrika Novosti. But it is not only the exhaustion of technical capabilities that will dampen the ardor of the Russian occupiers, the warring oppositionist added. There is another important factor. The mood among Russian citizens is becoming increasingly anti-war. People are beginning to understand that the adventure that Putin has started is not at all needed by the people of the Russian Federation. He said, "Look, in 2 weeks, there have been 4 dam breaks in Russia. Putin keeps talking about some kind of breakthrough. He probably means a scientific and technical breakthrough. But so far, only dams that are not very complex hydraulic structures are bursting. But he can't even maintain them in normal working order," Andronikov noted. He also answered the question of what the Legion would do if military actions froze. According to him, the legionnaires, as volunteers, could very well go home and begin on their native land those actions that they consider necessary. But as a citizen of the Russian Federation, a Russian person and a Christian, I will not lay down my arms as long as Putin and his clique exist. Because if Putin personally dies, the system will remain the same. I will fight against it with all available forces and means. military, political, ideological. And many of my legionnaire brothers are ready to follow my example," said the leader of Freedom of Russia,